It was a lazy Sunday afternoon when I first saw this match. I was talking to some friends in a group chat about Yoshiaki Fujiwara after watching some of his more hyped work from the 80s. Fujiwara is someone who's been in my sphere of attention before. You can hear me talk about him in my 1990 video as one of the best wrestlers of that year, and the more I see of him, the more I've come to really love his performances. That's when a friend of mine, Brock, check out his blog Brock Hates Wrestling, link down below in the description, recommended this match from 1997 to me. A one-time only singles match between Yoshiaki Fujiwara and Genichiro Tenryu. And it's a match that just blew me away. So let's talk about it. In 1997, Genichiro Tenryu's Wrestle Association R promotion, formerly known as Wrestle and Romance, announced that they would soon be instituting a brand new heavyweight championship. Although the promotion had opened all the way back in 1992, it had yet to set up its own top heavyweight championship to rival the likes of the IWGP heavyweight title or the Triple Crown title at the time. To lend War's top championship a certain air of prestige, Tenryu would reach into the foundational history of Japanese professional wrestling. For War's new title, they would utilize the very same championship belt that Rikidozan, the patriarch of Puroresu, wore on his waist in the 50s and 60s. The Japanese heavyweight championship belt would be rechristened the J1 Heavyweight Championship. The inaugural champion would be determined in a 7-man single elimination tournament. And that brings us to the match that we're talking about today. Genichiro Tenryu versus Yoshiaki Fujiwara in a first-round match in the J1 Heavyweight Championship Tournament. Even though I don't speak Japanese, a lot of this context and history is wonderfully conveyed through the pre-match video packages. We even get some neat sit-down interviews with Tenryu and Fujiwara. I can't understand a word that they're saying, but they sure both look cool talking about Rikidozan's title and what it means to them. And that brings us to the match itself. I love it. I really do. It's one of those matches that just swoops in like a sudden kick in the teeth or a swift right hook. The kind of match that rattles your insides with how giddy it can get you with its awesomeness. The wonderful thing about it, too, is that there's really not much here in terms of being intricate or rife with detail. It does very few things when you really break it down, but it does all those things pretty much perfectly. But let's cut to the chase here and talk about the driving force that makes this match so fantastic. Quite simply, it's Yoshiaki Fujiwara. First, it's a matter of what he brings to this particular matchup. One of the things I've noticed about watching Tenryu through my 1990s project is that he has a very real problem with the opponents he's been given. Especially when he's working in his offshoot promotions like SWS, more often than not he's working with talent that's at least a step beneath him. It's really hard to buy into a lot of them as credible opponents against Tenryu. Fujiwara doesn't have that problem. He's already a fortified main eventer and living legend at this point. He also has absolutely no trouble standing up to Tenryu in the ring. This isn't someone that Tenryu's just going to overshadow through sheer force of talent. Fujiwara's as good as they come, and not only does he hold his own in this match, but he arguably has Tenryu's number for most of it. This becomes clear in the parts where Fujiwara doesn't want to just immediately give in to Tenryu's attempts at comebacks. If you watch carefully, you can see that if Tenryu doesn't connect flush, or if a move isn't quite up to snuff, Fujiwara doesn't give it the time of day. It's uncooperative, yes, but in just the right way to add to the match's texture instead of detracting away from it. On top of that, there's Fujiwara's charisma. For a match involving two of the most brutal and hard-hitting wrestlers ever, Fujiwara has a lot of fun here. He always does. He's generally one of the more expressive wrestlers I've ever seen, and that makes it really easy to emotionally invest in him. That's on full display here early on when he bitches to the referee about Tenryu being too oiled up after Tenryu slips out of the Fujiwara armbar. It's such a petty interaction, but it adds a lot of charm to the proceedings here before things start getting much more chippy. Later on, a highlight of this match is the referee's futile attempt to get Fujiwara to open his fists for his punches. Fujiwara's outright refusal is so great, as is the small moment where he wipes his bloody knuckles on the turnbuckle pad. Absolute boss move. And speaking of those punches, yeah, those rule. The strikes in this match all pretty much rule, as these are two guys who do not hesitate to hit their opponent as hard as possible. Again, that's something I typically associate with Tenryu, of course, but Fujiwara takes up so much offense in this match that he's basically just beating the ever-living hell out of Tenryu for most of this. That's helped as well by blood, and let's be honest, there's never been a wrestling match made less interesting by blood. As Fujiwara throws a mean set of punches and headbutts to get Tenryu's plasma flowing. Fabulous stuff. This is about as meat and potatoes a match as you can get. Emphasis on the potatoes. It's incredibly simplistic in layout and execution. It's basically a long control segment from Fujiwara, occasionally broken up by attempted comebacks until Tenryu finally breaks through at the finish. Even the finish, which I've seen criticized for being abrupt and too sudden, it works for me. Tenryu catches a lucky chop to the throat, and that's enough to get Fujiwara down for the 3 count. Awesome. What a delightful match. Easy to watch with or without context. Bursting with violence and personality. It's pretty much everything you could want out of these two. Is there an even better version of this, featuring these two that has more fire and more violence? Yeah, probably. It's a shame that this only happened once, but given that it's all we have, it's pretty goddamn great. 4.5 stars for this one. But is it better than 6-3-94? You know what? It's kind of close, but I'll still give the edge on this one to Kawada and Misawa. While Tenryu and Fujiwara present a tighter, meaner package, the emotional heft behind Kawada and Misawa does allow it to overcome this particular encounter, and this match struggles in its own ways with managing time. A little less limb work in the opening stretches for this, and maybe a hotter finish, and then maybe it would have a better chance in this conversation. As it is now, though, it's just a shade beneath the famous classic. Thank you all so much for getting to the end of the video. I really appreciate you guys dipping in and checking out my thoughts on this wonderful match. I hope you guys are encouraged to find it and watch it for yourselves. Of course, I'd have to send a massive thank you to all of my supporters over on Ko-fi. Thank you to my one-time supporters in Juancy Gonzalez, SWK, Christy Turner, and AJ Tigner. And a massive, massive thank you to all of my monthly supporters in James Draper, Captain Jack Heartless, Eddie Roberts, Jacob Dickens, Matt Brummett, Chick Fritz, Spiders in My Bed, Timothy R. Buchner, Indelaine, Donomatic, Peter Vinison, Kid Kingpin, Joe Humphreys, Christopher Jackson, Saltine Daltine, Dustin Faulkner, Edgar Molina, Four Pillars of Hell, Sean Emily, Mason Rollison, Carve Cutta, Jacob VR, Andrew Perry, Craig Jones, Merch Table Mafia, Clem DK, Suitcoat Man, Ando Commando, Con, Shane, Vibe MD, Christoph, Quentin Besnahard, and Matthew Haggerty. You guys are absolutely amazing. Thank you so much for supporting the channel. You guys rule. Thank you so much for sticking around, and have a good one.